The slaver ship shook hard as it hit the docking clamps, felt the metal floor tremble under her small body. She was hiding in a dark corner of the cargo hold, pressed between two cold walls, making herself as small as possible. She was a hatchling, only 2 cycles old. Her scales were pale blue, not yet bright with age. Her wings were still soft and thin. She was no bigger than a medium-sized Earth dog, though she did not know what Earth was or what dogs looked like. What she knew was fear. 3 days ago, the slavers had caught her mother. They had come with nets that burned and weapons that screamed. Her mother had fought. Her mother had told her to run. Her mother had not followed. Had hidden in the ship's walls, crawling through pipes and vents, eating nothing, drinking nothing. She had heard the slavers talk about her. They called her the small one and said she was worth less than her mother but still valuable. Scales sold for high prices. Blood was used in medicines. Eyes were collected by rich people who liked to own rare things. She was not a person to them. She was parts waiting to be sold. Now the ship had stopped at a place the slavers called Meridian's Rest. It was a space station, a human station, floating in the darkness between star systems. The slavers needed supplies. They needed fuel. They would be here for 1 day, maybe 2. Knew this was her only chance. When the cargo doors opened and the slavers walked out to meet their contacts, she moved. Her small claws scratched against metal as she climbed through a broken vent cover. Her torn wing dragged behind her, sending pain through her whole body. One of the slavers had grabbed her 2 days ago and she had barely escaped, leaving part of her wing membrane in his claws. The station air was different from the ship. It smelled like oil and metal and something warm. She followed that warmth because warmth meant life and life meant places to hide. She did not know where she was going. She only knew she had to get away. The hallways of the station were large and bright, too bright. She stayed in the shadows near the ceiling, using her claws to grip the pipes and beams. Her body was made for climbing. Her ancestors had lived on cliff faces and inside volcanic caves. Even hurt and scared, she could move through high places. She passed many doors and many rooms. She saw creatures she did not recognize, tall ones with too many arms, short ones covered in fur, thin ones that seemed to float instead of walk, and she saw humans. Humans were the ones her mother had warned her about most. The stories said humans were the most dangerous species in the known galaxy. They had evolved on a planet that tried to kill them every day. They had survived ice ages and plagues and disasters that would have ended other species. They had not just survived. They had conquered. They had spread across the stars with a speed that frightened older civilizations. Humans ate meat. Humans hunted for pleasure. Humans kept other animals as servants and called them pets. Humans had once driven thousands of species on there to extinction, simply because those species were inconvenient. And humans never, ever gave up. If a human decided to chase you, her mother had said, you would never escape. They did not stop. They did not tire. They followed and followed until their prey collapsed from exhaustion, and then they moved in for the kill. Saw a group of humans walking below her. They wore work clothes covered in grease and dirt. They were laughing at something one of them had said. Their teeth showed when they laughed. So many teeth. She pressed herself against the ceiling beam and held her breath until they passed. At the end of a long hallway, she found an open door. Beyond it was a large room filled with machines and vehicles and stacked containers. The warmth was stronger here. Good warmth. The kind that came from engines and power cores. A human hangar. Every instinct told her not to enter. This was a human place. Humans lived and worked here. She would be walking into the territory of predators. But her wing hurt so badly. Her stomach was empty and cramped. Her legs were shaking. She could not climb anymore. She could not run anymore. She needed to rest, just for a little while. The hangar was cluttered and messy, full of hiding places. Crawled down from the ceiling and made her way to the back, where old cargo containers were stacked against the wall. There was a gap between two of them, dark and tight and warm from a nearby power conduit. She squeezed herself inside and collapsed. For a long time she just lay there shaking. Her wing throbbed. Her throat burned with thirst. She could hear humans moving around the hangar, talking and working. Their voices were loud and strange. She heard metal clanging and machines humming. She waited for them to find her. She waited for the hunt to begin. But no one came. Hours passed. The lights in the hangar dimmed. The human voices grew quieter. Some of them left. Others stayed, but they seemed to sleep. Did not sleep, she could not. Every sound made her jump. Every shadow made her heart race. She thought about her mother. She thought about her home, the warm caves where she had hatched, the sky that had turned orange during sunset, the sound of her mother's voice singing the old songs. All gone now, all taken. She was alone in the dark, surrounded by the most dangerous species in the galaxy, with nothing but fear to keep her company. In the front of the hangar, a human woman sat at a workstation, looking at screens full of numbers and diagrams. Her name was, though did not know this yet, she was the chief mechanic, responsible for keeping the hangar running smoothly. Frowned at her screen. The heat sensors were showing something strange, an unusual signature in the back storage area, probably a glitch. The station systems were old and cranky. They threw false readings all the time. She made a note to check it tomorrow and went back to her work. Behind the cargo containers, hidden in the dark, a small dragon hatchling pressed herself against the warm pipes and tried not to make a sound. She did not know that the woman at the screen had just decided not to investigate. She did not know that this small decision would change everything. She only knew that she was tired and hurt and more alone than she had ever been in her short life. And somewhere outside the station, the slavers were finishing their business, not yet realizing that their most valuable cargo had escaped into the territory of humans. 3 days passed in the human hangar, 3 days of hiding, 3 days of thirst and hunger and pain. Grew weaker with each hour. Her torn wing had stopped bleeding, but it had started to smell bad. The skin around the tear was hot and swollen. Infection was setting in. Without treatment, she knew what would happen. The infection would spread. Fever would come. And then she would die in this dark corner, alone and forgotten. Perhaps that was better than being caught. She had watched the humans carefully during these 3 days. There were 6 of them who worked in the hangar. The woman with dark hair who seemed to be the leader, an old man with hair and rough hands, a young man who moved clumsily and smiled too much, and 3 others who came and went. They spent their days fixing machines and ships. They talked constantly. They laughed often. Sometimes they argued, but their arguments never became violent. They shared food. They helped each other with heavy lifting. They said goodbye when they left and hello when they arrived. Did not understand them. In her limited experience, powerful creatures did not behave this way. Powerful creatures took what they wanted. Powerful creatures did not share or help or laugh together. But she was too weak to think about it deeply. Her thoughts were becoming foggy. The fever was starting. On the morning of the 4th day, the young human with the clumsy movements came to the back of the hangar. His name was. He was an apprentice mechanic, still learning, still making mistakes. Today had sent him to count the supplies in the storage area. Did not want to count supplies. It was boring work. But he was new and new workers got the boring jobs. He understood this. He walked between the stacked containers, holding a tablet and making notes. He counted fuel cells and replacement parts and cleaning chemicals. He yawned several times. He thought about what he would eat for lunch. Then he knocked over a box of old tools. They crashed to the floor with a terrible noise, swore and bent down to pick them up. As he reached for a fallen wrench, he looked into the gap between 2 containers. 2 eyes looked back at him. Froze completely. His hand stopped in the air. His breath caught in his throat. In the dark gap pressed into the corner was a creature he had never seen before. It was small, about the size of a large cat. It had scales that might have been blue but now looked dull. It had small wings, one of them clearly damaged. It had a long tail curled around its body, and it had eyes that were filled with complete and absolute terror. A dragon. It looked like a dragon from the old Earth stories. The creature opened its mouth, saw small fangs. He saw a glow building in the back of its throat. It was trying to breathe fire at him. But nothing came out, just a small puff of smoke and a weak coughing sound. The creature shrank back even further, pressing itself against the wall. It was shaking badly. It was waiting for him to attack. Had never considered himself a brave man. He was not a soldier or a hero. He was just a mechanic who had left Earth because he wanted to see the stars. He did not know how to fight. He did not know how to deal with scared alien creatures. But he knew what fear looked like, and he knew what it felt like to be small and helpless in a universe that did not care about you. Slowly, very slowly, stepped back. He put down the tools he was holding. He moved away from the gap until he was several meters back. Then, carefully, he sat down on the floor. He made himself small. He put his hands on his knees where they could be seen. And he spoke softly. "Hey, it's okay. I'm not going to hurt you." The creature did not understand his words. It had a translator implant, but the implant had been damaged during its escape. It heard only strange sounds in a strange voice. But it understood his tone. It understood that this large predator had just made itself smaller. It understood that he had moved away instead of moving closer. It understood that his voice was gentle instead of harsh. The creature continued to shake. It did not take its eyes off him, but it did not try to run. Sat there for a long time. He did not move. He did not speak again. He just waited, trying to look as harmless as possible. Finally, slowly, he stood up. The creature flinched but did not flee. "I'll be right back," said. "Don't go anywhere. I mean, I know you probably can't go anywhere, but still, just wait." He left the storage area. The creature watched him go and felt certain he was going to get weapons. He was going to bring other humans. They would drag her out of hiding and kill her or sell her or do whatever humans did to creatures like her. But minutes later returned, alone with no weapons. He was carrying a small container of water and a protein bar from his own lunch pack. He walked slowly to the gap between the containers. He set the water and the food on the floor, about a meter away from the hiding spot. Then he backed away again and sat down on the floor, just as before. "It's not much," he said quietly. "I don't know what you eat, but it's something. You look like you need something." The creature stared at the offerings. Water, food, left where she could reach them without coming too close to the human. This did not make sense. Predators did not feed their prey. Hunters did not help the creatures they hunted. But she was so thirsty. Her throat was burning. The water was right there, close enough to reach if she stretched out her neck. For a long moment she did not move. Neither did. He just sat there, watching her with soft eyes, saying nothing. Finally, slowly, stretched her neck out of the gap. She kept her eyes on the whole time. Her body was tense, ready to pull back at the slightest movement from him. He did not move. She touched her tongue to the water. It was clean. It was cool. It was the best thing she had ever tasted. She drank all of it, quickly, desperately. Then she pulled back into her hiding spot and stared at the human, waiting for the trick, waiting for the trap. But just smiled softly. "Good," he said. "That's good. I'll bring more tomorrow, okay? I'll bring more." He stood up slowly and walked away, leaving the protein bar behind. He did not look back. He did not make any sudden movements. Watched him go. Her heart was still racing with fear. But there was something else now, too. Something small and fragile and impossible. Hope. She did not know if she could trust it. She did not know if she should. But for the first time in many days, she did not feel completely alone. Told that same evening. He did not know what else to do. He was young and confused, and there was a sick alien creature hiding in their hangar. He needed help. Listened to his story without interrupting. Her face showed nothing. When he finished, she sat quietly for a long moment. "Show me," she said. They walked to the back of the hangar together. Moved carefully, the way someone moves when they do not want to scare a frightened animal. Stayed behind her, pointing the way. When looked into the gap between the containers, she saw exactly what it described. A small creature with dull scales and damaged wings pressed into the corner, eyes wide with fear. She said quietly, "a hatchling. You know what it is. I've seen pictures, read reports. They're endangered, hunted almost to extinction for their scales and blood." His jaw tightened. Someone was keeping this one, someone lost it, and now it's here, sick and starving. She stepped back from the gap and looked at seriously. "We should report this to station security." "But," I said should, I didn't say would. Had worked on Meridian's Rest for 15 years. She knew how the station worked. She knew that security officers took bribes. She knew that inconvenient aliens sometimes disappeared into holding cells and never came out. She knew that doing the official thing was not always the right thing. She also knew that somewhere on this station, there were probably people looking for this hatchling. People who would pay money to get it back. People who would hurt it. "We need to talk to the others," she said. That night after the hangar officially closed, gathered her crew. Was there, nervous and quiet. Old was there, a veteran spacer with scars on his hands and stories in his eyes. 3 other mechanics came too. Jun, who rarely spoke, who never stopped talking, and Sam, who fell somewhere in between. Explained the situation. She told them what was hiding in the back of their hangar. She told them the risks of keeping it secret. She told them what might happen if they reported it. Then she asked them to choose. The conversation lasted 2 hours. There were arguments. There were concerns. Jun worried about losing their jobs, worried about legal trouble. Sam worried about what would happen if the creature's owners came looking. But in the end, Old spoke up. His voice was rough from decades of breathing ship air. "I've been in space for 40 years, he said. "I've seen a lot of things, good things and bad things. I've seen what happens to creatures like this when they fall into the wrong hands." He paused. "This is a child, a scared, hurt child hiding in our home. If we turn our backs on that, what are we?" The vote was unanimous. They would help. The next weeks were difficult. The crew had to work carefully, keeping their secret while doing their regular jobs. They took turns bringing food and water too. They blocked the heat sensors that might reveal her location. They made excuses when other workers asked about the back storage area. Contacted an old friend, a doctor named who worked in the station's medical wing. Owed many favors. More importantly, was the kind of person who became a doctor because she wanted to help people, not because she wanted money or status. Came to the hangar late one night. She examined carefully, moving slowly, speaking softly. The hatchling was terrified but too weak to resist. Cleaned the infected wound, applied medicine, and wrapped the damaged wing in healing bandages. "She'll live," said afterward, "but she needs rest and food, lots of both, and she needs to feel safe. That might be the hardest part." Nodded, she understood. She had raised horses back on Earth before she came to space. She knew how to work with frightened animals. You had to be patient. You had to be consistent. You had to prove day after day that you were not a threat. So that was what they did. Every day at the same time would come to his hiding spot. She would bring food and fresh water. She would sit a few meters away and talk in a soft voice. She would not approach or try to touch. She would just be present. "You're safe," she would say. "You're safe here." Over and over, day after day. At first did not respond. She ate the food because she had to survive, but she watched with suspicious eyes. She flinched at every movement. She expected the kindness to end at any moment. But it did not end. Days turned into weeks, The infection healed. Scales began to regain their color. Her strength slowly returned. And something else began to change, too. She started to understand the humans, not their words at first, but their behavior. She watched them constantly, studying them like a hunter studies prey. What she saw confused her. She saw work for 18 hours straight, then fall asleep in a chair because she was too tired to walk to her quarters. She saw share his food with when the old man forgot to bring lunch. She saw stay late to help Jun with a difficult repair, even though it was not her job. She saw return again and again to check on, risking her medical license each time. These humans were not like the slavers. They were not predators waiting for a moment to strike. They were a pack. Knew about packs. Her own species had once lived in family groups, protecting each other, caring for the young and the old. She had lost her pack when the slavers came. Now she was watching another pack, a human pack, and they were behaving as if she belonged to them. Slowly, carefully, her fear began to fade. One evening came to bring her dinner. As usual, he set the food down and stepped back. As usual, he sat on the floor and talked quietly about his day. But this time did something new. She walked out of her hiding spot, not far, just a few steps, just enough to eat her food in the open instead of in the shadows. Stopped talking mid-sentence. His eyes went wide. Looked at him, and for the first time she tried to speak. Safe, she said. The word came out rough and broken. Her throat was not made for human sounds, but it was close enough. His face broke into a huge smile. Yeah, he said, his voice shaking a little. Yeah, you're safe here. Behind the cargo containers, hidden from view, had been watching. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand and turned away. They had a long way to go, but they had made a start. The slavers had not forgot their lost merchandise. For weeks they had searched quietly. They asked questions at bars and trading posts. They bribed dock workers and security officers. They followed rumors and leads that went nowhere. But finally, they found something useful. A cleaning worker at Meridian's Rest mentioned seeing a strange heat signature on a maintenance report. An unusual reading in a civilian hangar. Probably nothing. Probably just old equipment acting up. The slavers paid him well for that information. The enforcer they sent to investigate was he was tall and thin, with skin and eyes that never seemed to blink. He had been hunting escaped cargo for 20 years. He had never failed to recover his targets. He arrived at Meridian's Rest on a quiet morning, dressed in expensive clothes, carrying identification that said he was a legitimate businessman. He smiled at the security officers and spoke politely to the administrators. He made friends easily. He spread money around generously. Within 2 days, he knew exactly where the hatchling was hiding. The hangar crew did not know they had been discovered. They continued their routine. They continued caring for. They continued believing their secret was safe. Had changed much in the past weeks. She could speak simple sentences now. She had learned the names of all the crew members. She no longer hid in the dark corner but had made a small nest near the warm power conduit where she could see the whole hangar. She still did not fully trust the humans. Part of her still expected the kindness to end. But she was beginning to hope that maybe, just maybe, she had found something real. Then the storm arrived. It was who first noticed something wrong. He had been in space long enough to recognize the signs of a hunt. He saw the way certain security officers walked through the hangar area, looking at everything too carefully. He heard whispers about an upcoming inspection. Something's happening, he told. Someone's looking for something. Felt cold fear in her stomach, but she kept her voice calm. We need a plan. The crew gathered that night. They spoke in low voices, aware that they might be watched. The situation was bad. If station security conducted a proper search, they would find. If they found, they would take her. And if they took her, she would end up back in the hands of the slavers. We can't hide her from a real search, Jun said quietly. The equipment is too good. We can't fight security, Sam added. They have weapons, we have wrenches. We can't run, said. None of our ships are fast enough. The crew fell silent. They had no good options. Watched them from her nest. She did not understand all the words, but she understood the fear in their faces. She understood that danger was coming. She understood that these humans, her pack, were trying to protect her even though they could not. Part of her thought she should leave. She should run away, disappear into the station, take the danger with her. These humans had already given her so much. They did not deserve to suffer for helping her. But before she could move, spoke. I have one more option, she said, but I need to make a call I never wanted to make. Had a brother, David. He was a captain in the United Earth Navy commanding a patrol ship called the Adamantine. They had not spoken in years. Old family arguments, painful memories, words that could not be taken back. But David was still her brother, and his ship was currently stationed only 2 days away. Went to a private communication terminal. She entered a code she had memorized but never used. She waited. David's face appeared on the screen. He looked older than she remembered, more tired, but his eyes were still the same. He sounded shocked. Is something wrong? She told him everything. The hatchling, the hangar, the coming search, the slavers. She told him about caring for a scared child who had nowhere else to go. She told him about the crew who had chosen to help. When she finished, she waited for his response. He could report her. He could end her career. He could say no. David was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, You found a scared kid and decided to protect her. What kind of man would I be if I didn't back that play? 2 days later, the UES Adamantine arrived at Meridian's Rest. Had already arranged everything. He had paid the right people. He had filed the right paperwork. He had obtained official detention orders for one unregistered alien creature found in civilian Hangar 7. He arrived at the hangar with 6 station security officers, all of them armed. He walked through the main door with confidence, ready to claim his prize. He stopped 3 steps inside. Between him and the back of the hangar stood 12 humans in military uniforms. They were armed with weapons far more advanced than anything station security carried. At their head was a tall man with hair and hard eyes. Captain David did not smile. Can I help you? He asked politely. Recovered quickly. He produced his paperwork. He explained that he had legal authority to detain an unregistered alien found in this location. He demanded that the military personnel step aside. David took the paperwork. He read it carefully. Then he handed it back. I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding, he said. There is no unregistered alien in this hangar. There is only a child under the protection of human citizens. And under United Earth law, any sapient being under the care of human citizens is entitled to the full protection of human law. His face darkened. That law is meant for human children. The law says sapient being. It does not say human. David's voice was calm but hard as steel. If you wish to challenge this interpretation, you are welcome to file a complaint with Earth Central. I understand they process such complaints in about 18 months, maybe 20. The security officers behind shifted nervously. They had expected to bully some civilian mechanics. They had not expected to face a naval captain and armed Marines. Stared at David. David stared back. Neither blinked. The moment stretched. Finally smiled. It was not a friendly smile. This is not over, he said. It is for today, David replied. Turned and walked out. The security officers followed, moving quickly, glad to leave. When they were gone, David let out a long breath. He turned too. You always did know how to find trouble, he said. Laughed. It was a shaky laugh full of relief. Behind the cargo containers had watched everything. She had seen the slavers come. She had seen the humans stand in their way. She had seen the predators become protectors. She did not understand all the words that had been spoken, but she understood what had happened. Her pack had fought for her, and they had won. 3 years passed on Meridian's rest. Grew, not as large as she should have been. The early starvation and sickness had left marks on her body that would never fully heal. She would always be small for her wings slightly uneven, her scales not quite as bright as they might have been. But she was alive, and she was strong, and she was no longer afraid. The hangar had become her home. She had a proper room now, a small space near the power systems where the warmth reminded her of the volcanic caves where she had hatched. She had a bed made of thermal blankets and cushions that had found for her. She had shelves for her things, a broken tool that had given her as a gift, a book about Earth horses that had bought for her, a small stone from Jun's home planet. She worked in the hangar now officially. Her small claws were perfect for delicate mechanical work. Her fire breathing, once so weak, had grown strong enough to serve as a welding torch. She could reach places the humans could not, crawl into tight spaces, see heat signatures that their eyes could not detect. She was useful. More importantly, she belonged. Had retired from active work the year before. Her joints hurt too much for the heavy lifting, but she still came to the hangar every day, sitting in her old chair, watching the crew, offering advice when asked. Brought her tea every morning. They would sit together and talk about nothing important. Was the chief mechanic now. He had grown into the job better than anyone expected. He was still clumsy sometimes. He still smiled too much. But he was good with people and he cared about doing things right. The crew respected him. Had passed away 6 months ago. His heart had stopped in his sleep, quietly, peacefully. The station held a small memorial service. Had spoken at it, standing before a room full of humans, her voice rough but clear. He taught me that strength is not about size, she had said. He taught me that family is not about blood. He called me little one. He called me brave. He called me granddaughter. She had paused, steadying herself. In my language, we have a word for someone who chooses to be family. I called him grandfather who chose, and I will remember him always. She still visited his memorial plaque every week, leaving small offerings of food and water in the old way. Life was good, life was peaceful. Then the ship arrived. Had known this day might come. Her species had been nearly destroyed, scattered across the galaxy, hunted to the edge of extinction. But in recent years, things had begun to change. They had organized. They had established new colonies. They had sent out ships to find their lost children. The ship that arrived at Meridian's rest was called the Voice of Embers. It was beautiful, covered in scales of gold and red, looking like a dragon made of metal. Aboard it were 50 survivors, led by an elder named. Was old, his scales faded to silver, his eyes clouded with age. He had scars across his face and body, marks of the great purges that had nearly ended their species. He walked slowly, painfully, but his voice was still strong. He came to meet in the hangar. He looked at her small room, her human friends, her life among aliens. You have done well, he said in the old tongue, the language of their ancestors. You have survived, you have grown, but you do not have to stay here. He told her about the new colonies. He told her about the who had gathered there, rebuilding their culture, raising their young, keeping the old ways alive. He told her that she could have a place among them, a home with her own kind, a chance to learn who she really was. You could help us rebuild, he said gently. You could be with your own people. You could have a true family. Listened, she considered. That night she could not sleep. She walked through the hangar, touching the machines she had helped repair, looking at the places where she had hidden and healed and grown. She went to his memorial plaque and sat before it for a long time. What did she want? What did she need? She had spent her whole life wanting to feel safe, wanting to feel like she belonged, wanting to find a place where she did not have to be afraid. She had found that place, But was it the right place? Was she truly where she was meant to be? The next morning she went to meet again. They sat in a quiet room, alone, facing each other. "I have thought about your offer," said. "I am grateful for it. I am honored by it." Nodded slowly, "But you will not accept it." Was surprised. "How did you know?" The old smiled. It was a sad smile, but also a kind one. "I saw the way you looked at those humans," he said. "I saw the way they looked at you. That is not the look of strangers living together. That is the look of family." Nodded, her eyes were wet. "They saved me," she said. "Not just my life. They saved everything I am. When I was alone and hurt and afraid, they chose to help. They risked everything for me, not because I was valuable, not because I was useful, just because I needed them." She looked out the window, toward the hangar where was probably drinking tea and was probably dropping tools, and the others were working and laughing and living. She said. "I will never forget that. I will teach your young ones the stories if they want to hear them from someone like me. I will help our people however I can, but my home is here. My family is here." Reached out and touched her face gently, the way an elder touches a child. "Then you have found what many never find," he said. "You have found where you belong." That evening, returned to the hangar, was in her chair, was arguing with a new apprentice about the right way to calibrate a fuel injector. Jun was working silently in a corner. The hangar was warm and loud and alive. Walked to and sat beside her. "I'm staying," she said. Smiled and put a hand on his head. "I know," she said. "I always knew." Outside in the darkness of space, the voice of Embers prepared to depart. Before it left, sent one final message to the station. It said, "Let it be known throughout the galaxy. The called is under the protection of humans. She is their family, and they are hers. Anyone who threatens her will answer to both our peoples." The message spread. It reached trading posts and military bases and dark corners where slavers gathered. It told a story that many species were beginning to understand. Humans were not just dangerous because of their weapons, or their persistence, or their refusal to surrender. Humans were dangerous because of their love. Give a human something small and scared and broken, and they would burn down the stars to keep it safe. Not because it was useful, not because it was valuable, simply because it needed them. And that is why, in all the galaxy's long memory, no species has ever successfully threatened something a human has decided to call family. In the hangar on Meridian's Rest, a small dragon who had once hidden in fear now worked among humans, laughing at their jokes, sharing their meals, calling them by name. She had come looking for a hiding place. She had found a home,